Chapter 1: Street Fighting and Troubled Youth. Ah, you see me now, don't you? The philosopher, the martial artist, the movie star. But let me tell you something, before I became the man you know, I was a firecracker waiting to explode. A wild, reckless kid running through the streets of Hong Kong, fists flying and trouble chasing me like a shadow. I wasn't always this calm, this disciplined. No, back then, I was chaos. I was energy without direction, like a dragon without a purpose. I thought I was invincible, that no one could touch me. And in a way, that made me dangerous, not just to others, but to myself. The streets of Hong Kong in the 1950s were alive, buzzing with life, but they could be unforgiving. Gangs roamed the alleyways, and fights broke out like thunderstorms, sudden, fierce, and without warning. And me? I was right in the middle of it all. I remember one fight in particular. It was late at night, the air thick with the smell of street food and rain-soaked concrete. A group of us had gathered in a narrow alley, the kind of place where echoes linger longer than they should. Words were exchanged, sharp, cutting words, and before I knew it, fists were flying. I wasn't fighting to defend myself or anyone else. No, I was fighting because I could. Because I wanted to prove something, to them, to myself. I wanted to be feared, respected. But in those moments, when adrenaline surged and the world blurred, I wasn't thinking about the consequences. My parents? They worried. Oh, how they worried. My mother, especially. She'd look at me with those eyes, full of love and fear, and say, "Bruce, you're going to get yourself killed." My father, more reserved, would shake his head and mutter, "This boy, he's going to bring shame to the family." And they were right to worry. My fists were quick, but my temper was quicker. I got into trouble with the law more than once, and each time, I'd see the disappointment in their faces. It was like a punch to the gut, one I couldn't block or dodge. That's why they sent me to America. Not just for a better life, but to save me from myself. They thought a change of scenery might calm the storm inside me. And I'll admit, when I first arrived in Seattle at 18, I was lost. I didn't know who I was without the chaos of the streets. But you know what? Looking back, I see now that those fights, those wild, reckless days, they taught me something. They taught me about power, about control, about what it means to truly fight. Not with your fists, but with your mind, your spirit. Martial arts became my salvation. It took that raw, untamed energy and shaped it into something meaningful. I learned that the greatest fight isn't against another person, it's against yourself. Against your anger, your fear, your ego. So, to that wild, rebellious kid running through the streets of Hong Kong, I say this: thank you. Thank you for your fire, for your passion. But also, thank you for letting go, for stepping aside so I could become something more. Because in the end, the street fights didn't define me. What defined me was the journey, the transformation from chaos to clarity, from a boy who fought to prove himself to a man who fought to understand himself. And that, my friends, is the real fight. The one that never ends. The one worth fighting. Chapter 2: Dropping Out of College. You know, I've always been a curious mind, hungry for knowledge. People see me as a martial artist, a fighter, but what they don't always see is the thinker behind the fists. That's why, in 1961, I found myself walking the halls of the University of Washington. Philosophy, that was my calling. The study of life, of existence, of meaning. It spoke to me, as martial arts did, in a way that was deeper than words. I remember those days clearly. The crisp Seattle air, the sound of footsteps echoing in the lecture halls, the smell of chalk dust in the classrooms. I'd sit there, surrounded by books and minds brimming with ideas, and I felt alive. Socrates, Nietzsche, Lao Tzu, they weren't just names in a textbook to me. They were guides, showing me the way to think, to question, to challenge. But here's the thing, as much as I loved philosophy, as much as I loved learning, the classroom walls started to feel constraining. My real classroom was the dojo, the streets, the world itself. The theories I read about in books. I wanted to test them, to live them. I wanted to see if the ideas of balance, of discipline, of self-mastery could hold up in the chaos of real life. And so, I made a choice. I left. I stepped away from formal education, from the structure of the university, and walked into the unknown. Now, don't think it was an easy decision. It wasn't. I knew what people would say. Bruce Lee? He dropped out? What a waste. I heard the whispers, felt the skepticism. Some people thought I wasn't serious, that I was just another kid who couldn't cut it. And, yes, there were moments, quiet moments, when I wondered if they were right. Did I make a mistake? Should I have stayed, finished my degree, proved to the world that I could be more than just a fighter? Maybe. Maybe not. You see, life isn't about fitting into someone else's mold. It's about carving your own path, even if it's rocky, even if it's uncertain. For me, that path led me away from the university and into the art of teaching, of sharing what I knew with others. Philosophy never left me, though. It's in everything I do. When I throw a punch, I think of the balance between force and flow. When I teach, I think of Socrates and his relentless questioning. When I live, I think of Lao Tzu's wisdom, be like water. And to those who doubted me, who thought I'd thrown my future away, I'd say this: education isn't confined to a classroom. Learning doesn't end with a diploma. My life became my education, my experiences my teachers. Do I regret leaving? No. Because that choice led me to where I was meant to be. It allowed me to combine the mind of a philosopher with the body of a martial artist. It allowed me to create something new, something uniquely mine. So, to anyone out there wondering if they're on the right path, I'll tell you what I've learned: follow your instincts. Trust your journey. And remember, the greatest lessons in life are often found outside the lines. Chapter 3: Relationship Challenges and Rumors of Infidelity. Relationships. They're the real battleground, aren't they? More than any fight in the ring, more than any opponent I faced, the struggles in my personal life were the ones that tested me the most. And in the midst of all the fame, all the success, I found myself facing something I hadn't prepared for: rumors. You see, when you're in the spotlight, people watch you. They watch every move you make, every word you say, every glance you give. And when they see a crack, even the smallest one, they don't hesitate to widen it, to turn it into something bigger. I was married to Linda, my first wife, a woman who stood by me through thick and thin. She saw me at my best, she saw me at my worst. And I loved her. I truly did. But love, like anything else, is complicated. And when you're on the rise, when you're living in the whirlwind of fame and success, things can get messy. There were rumors that I had strayed. They said I had an affair with Betty Ting Pei, a beautiful actress who crossed my path during my time in Hong Kong. Now, let me be clear, I don't know what the truth is anymore. Some say it happened, some say it didn't. But let me tell you, whether it was true or not, the damage was done. Those rumors, those whispers, they followed me everywhere. They tainted my reputation, put a stain on my image. And worse, they hurt Linda. They hurt her in a way that no punch ever could. I remember the tension, the cold silences. The way Linda would look at me sometimes, not with anger, but with disappointment. It wasn't the disappointment of someone who didn't love me, it was the disappointment of someone who had given her heart to a man who wasn't always there, who wasn't always faithful. And for that, I am sorry. I am deeply sorry. Because no matter how strong you are, no matter how famous you become, you can't escape the consequences of your actions. I should have been better. I should have been more present, more honest, more faithful. But life is messy. We make choices, sometimes without thinking, sometimes out of weakness. And we live with those choices, carrying them with us, even when we don't want to. I look back now, and I see the mistakes I made. I see the damage I caused, not just to Linda, but to myself. Because the truth is, no matter how many trophies I won, no matter how many fights I won, none of it mattered if I couldn't win in the most important fight of all, the fight to be a better man. Did I regret it? Yes. I regretted the hurt I caused. But I also learned. I learned that the greatest victories aren't the ones in the ring or on the screen, they're the ones you win in your heart, in your relationships, in your choices. And so, as I stand here now, I can only offer this: I wish I had done better. I wish I had been more faithful, more present. But I also know that the man I am today is shaped by those struggles, by those mistakes. If I could go back, I would. I would change the things I could. But I can't. All I can do now is move forward, with the lessons I've learned, with the love I still have, and with the hope that I can be better, that I can be the man I always wanted to be. And to Linda, wherever she is, I want to say this: I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the pain, for the hurt, for the things I didn't do right. You deserved more, and I failed you in ways I'll never forget. But I hope you know that in my heart, I always loved you. Chapter 4: Pushing his body to dangerous limits. I was always driven. Driven by a need to be the best, to be faster, stronger, more precise. It wasn't enough to just be good, you see. I wanted to be great. And greatness, I believed, came from pushing yourself beyond what others thought was possible. From testing the limits of your body, your mind, your spirit. But there's a fine line, isn't there? A line between pushing yourself to greatness and pushing yourself to destruction. And I crossed that line. I remember the days when I'd train for hours, no, for days, it felt like. I'd wake up before the sun, and I wouldn't stop until my body was drenched in sweat, my muscles screaming for relief. I didn't care. Pain was just a weakness leaving the body, wasn't it? I'd push harder, faster, always striving for that next level. I thought I was invincible. I thought that if I just kept going, if I just kept pushing, there was nothing that could stop me. But in May of 1973, my body that I had trusted, that I had pushed beyond its limits, betrayed me. It was a day like any other. I had been training relentlessly, working on my speed, my endurance, my strength. But that day, something felt off. My head was pounding, my vision blurred, and my body felt heavier than usual. I collapsed. I fell to the ground, and I couldn't move. The next thing I knew, I was in the hospital, surrounded by doctors who told me I'd had a seizure. They said it was from overexertion. Too much, too fast. My body had reached its breaking point. And for the first time, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit: I wasn't invincible. But I didn't listen. I didn't take the warning. I didn't stop. I kept training, kept pushing, thinking that I could outrun my limits. That I could conquer my own body. But that was the mistake. I wasn't just fighting the world anymore, I was fighting myself. And 2 months later, just like that, I was gone. A life cut short, a dream unfinished. They say it was a reaction to medication, some say it was an allergic reaction. But deep down, I know the truth. I had pushed myself too hard. I had ignored the signs, the warnings, the whispers of my body telling me to slow down. And now, here I am, looking back, and I wonder. Was it worth it? Was all the sweat, all the pain, all the sacrifice worth it if it led to this? I lived my life with intensity, with passion, with a drive that few could understand. I wanted to be the best, to transcend the limits of what was possible. But maybe, just maybe, there's a lesson in all of this. You see, the greatest strength isn't in how much you can push yourself, it's in knowing when to stop. Knowing when to listen to your body, when to rest, when to heal. It's about balance. And I forgot that balance. I've left this world, but I hope my legacy isn't just about the fights I won, the movies I made, the records I set. I hope it's about the lesson I learned too late, that strength comes not just from pushing yourself, but from knowing your limits and respecting them. So, to those of you who follow in my footsteps, to those who train with the same fire that I once had, I say this: don't make the same mistake I did. Push yourself, yes. But don't forget to listen. Don't forget to rest. Because no matter how strong you are, your body will only carry you as far as you let it.